The next section is presented by Vincent Lacomme. He is a French chartered accountant and auditor. He has more than 13 years of experience and is specialized in optimizing information system and data management. In this session, he will show us how to use Power Query and Power BI for HR reporting. Okay, now I will show the presentation.
Human resources reporting is essential for companies to drive their recruitment and wages decisions and to plan future year budgets. Do you know the average wage of your employees or the total number of hours of absences? What is the average seniority of your staff? Excel files and formulas are great to prepare such reporting, but they generally require to repeat the same actions every month, like copying and pasting exports from your payroll software, and then updating formulas. Using Power Query and Power BI, you can structure your sources of data to harvest relevant information with minimal efforts. You can import your data easily and even connect to your HR database software. Time-consuming tasks can be reduced or eliminated with the data cleansing functions of Power Query. Rendering your data into gorgeous Power BI visuals is key to providing an efficient reporting. Then, you can concentrate on generating value for your company with both quantitative and qualitative information. Hello, good morning or good evening. Welcome to this session about HR reporting dashboard with Power BI and Power Query. Thank you for attending and thank you to Liam and the Sun Product team for organizing this global event. It is great to host this session with you. You can ask questions in the chat or simply react in the comments if you're watching this as a replay. My name is Vincent Lacomme. I am a French chartered accountant, CPA, and auditor working in Paris. I am also DA 100 certified data analyst by Microsoft. My daily work often involves handling complex data files and finding ways to compute the relevant information. This includes payroll data, which are quite complex, at least here in France. As years go by, accountants, CFOs, business controllers, etc. have to handle more and more data in their day-to-day work. So I quickly was interested in Power BI and Power Query and how to use them efficiently for our clients in addition to Excel. This session will run for around 50 minutes. Prepare your keyboards and Excel spreadsheets. If you have any comment, feel free to use the chat. Let's get underway. First, I'd like to give you a few insights as to why HR dashboards are crucial for a company. In terms of strategy and management, understanding how wages are structured over time is key to managing your team and company, even in smaller sized ones. Strategic decisions have to be made and need to be backed with relevant data. This is not limited to big companies. Companies with as little as 10 or 15 employees quickly need to understand the past indicators and possibly make simulations in the future. When hiring a new employee, the question is, what will it cost me? Should I hire a junior candidate or an intermediate one? What is the optimal payroll? Can I increase the global payrolls? In terms of business control and finance, keeping track of leaves balances, average absence, sick leaves is really important to configure a company to determine your overhead costs and of course the price of your goods or services. Business controllers and financial divisions need to get these data to drive budgets. And finally, for the communication side, French laws imply that you must deliver social data to staff representatives depending on the size of the company. This is a mandatory obligation. And naturally, all companies need to communicate to their shareholders about their HR figures. In view of all these elements, the main HR dashboards will generally include the following KPIs: wage data, like evolution over time, top paid employees, employees statistic, headcount, demographics, turnover, performance, work time, build hours, productivity, learning time, etc. What are the solutions for creating dashboards? You could use the payroll software. In some case, it might have some visuals functionalities. You could use a standalone reporting software where you would import data from the payroll software to this reporting software. It would require manual work. And of course, and this will be the topic of today's session, you have the combo of Power Query plus Excel and the combo of Power Query plus Power BI. Now, in this session, I will present a complete example. Before that, I need you to understand quickly the nature of the input data, which is from a French payroll document. In France, payslips are really complicated to make and understand. You really need glasses given the number of different contributions that exist. In some cases, payslips can run on 2 pages with a lot of details. Sometimes I am asked by customers, can I do a payslip with Excel? As you can guess, the answer is no in France. A software is absolutely necessary given its complexity. Without going into any more detail, in this session we will focus on 3 categories for simplification. The gross wage, which is the amount paid by the company, the employee contributions, that is deducted from the gross wage, and the company contributions, which is also paid by the company. So these are the 3 main categories that we will see in the example. When computing these figures, the net wages that the employee gets at the end is equal to the difference between the gross wage and the employee contribution. So 100 minus 25 equals 75. And the cost for the company is equal to the sum of the gross wage plus the company contributions. That's 100 plus 40 equals 140. In this example, I will use an Excel file as the input data. This Excel file has 3 sheets. The first one is a payroll journal extracts. The second one is a list of all the employees with their date of birth, date of entry, date of end, contract, etc. And the last sheet is a list of location. As in this example, we have 4 offices. In the payroll journal, you have around 14 columns with the team code, an identification number, the month, the year, the employee name, and as you can see, the employee name is not repeated on all cells. It's only appear once, and then we move on to the second one. Then we have a column with the transaction name, which is the French code of the contribution or the French code for the wage. We have a column called base headcount, a column with another base or quantity, a rate, and then the gross wage or the employee contribution appear in this column, while the company contributions are separated in this column here. Finally, we have the company name in a column, the location ID, which is blank actually, and a contribution type column where you will see if this row is for the gross wage or for contributions. Now keep in mind that what we're interested in are the gross wage employee contribution in the J column and the company contribution in the K column. The first rows of each employee in this journal are the gross wage rows, and the second part of the rows are all the contributions, whether they're from the employee or the company. What are our goals for this example? It is to generate a very simple dashboard with the three following KPIs: wage evolution per team, average, top, lowest wage per team, and 5 top paid employees. Naturally, we could do a lot more, but we only have an hour for this session. The steps are the following. We will import the payroll journal and employee list, which I showed you in the Excel file, into Power Query to do transformation steps. Then, when the data is structured, we will get a data model that we can use in Power BI to generate a reporting. The first step is to clean the data using Power Query. We need to come up with a structured table that contains relevant information. I will assume that you are familiar with the basics of Power Query and its interface, and I will try not to go as far as M-code. There are some very good videos about the basics of mashup code. Let us begin by identifying what's wrong with the current tables. In the payroll journal, as I said earlier, the employee name is not repeated on each rows. Another issue, if I use the filter, is that there are subtotal rows which will not be necessary. It's actually the sum of all the previous rows. So we will have to remove them as they are useless. Another issue is the date formatting. We have separate columns for the month and the year. In Power Query, we will need a day, month, year format in one column to use the time intelligence functions of Power BI. Another problem is the employees are referred to by their full name, while in the list of employees we have the last name and first name in separate columns. And as you can notice, here in the list of employees I have an identification number, while here in the payroll journal I do not have this identification. And finally, we have some columns that are useless or empty, like the location ID is empty. We will delete them. Let's start the transformation. For that, I'm going to open Power BI to create a new document. So once I've opened Power BI, I'm going to go in the Power Query editor, clicking here on Transform Data. Then I'm going to ask for a new source of data, which is an Excel workbook. And here we go. Once the Excel workbook is loaded, I can select the three tables in my three sheets I need. So here we go. So the first one is the payroll table. Then we have my employees and my location. And I'm going to create a team code table as well. How am I going to do that? By referencing this table here, renaming it to teams. And then I'm going to remove other columns, remove duplicates, and now I have all my teams in one table. So let's get back to the payroll table. The first step I'm going to do is remove all the subtotals rows which I don't need. So if you remember, it was in the employee column. I'm loading more data and I'm going to remove, filter out the subtotal. Okay. Next, I'm going to remove all unwanted columns. So as I said earlier, I don't need the ID column. I don't need the headcount, base quantity, rate. I'm going to keep the gross wage and company contributions. I don't need the company in this example, nor the location ID. So I click on delete and OK. Now I'm going to address the absence of the employee name on all rows. For that, it's very simple. I click on the column, I go to transform, fill, and choose down. That way, the employee name will be repeated on all the next rows until there is a new one. Now this could also work using the fill up if we wanted to repeat the next values rather than the previous one. We also have to handle the date formatting. So to do that, I'm going to use a bit of M code. In Power Query in M code, you have to format your date this way using this and the date end of month function. So I'm going to create a new column, a custom one, and call it date. And then I'm going to select my fields with the year first, so year, the month, and the day is not in my data. So for now, I'm going to say it's the first of the month. But I would prefer to have the last day of the month, which is why I talked about date.end of month function, which will automatically compute the last day. So that's it. And the result is here. I have the last day of each month, and that will be my date reference. I'm going to set this as a date format. Okay. So when I showed you the Excel file, I said that we needed to match between the list of employees and the payroll journal to have the same presentation of the employee. So I'm going to add a column in the list of employee with the first name and the last name so that I can match with the payroll journal format. So employees, and I'm going to click on transform, no, add column and merge column. Separator is a space and we're calling that full name. So unfortunately, Power Query automatically merged it in the order of the columns, so last name and first name, and I wanted the reverse way. So I'm going to have to go here in order to get, here I have Hugo Bob, and I want to get Bob Hugo. So I'm going to have to swap the fields in the M formula. It will not be very difficult. So here I'm saying first name, comma, last name. And that's it. Bob Hugo is here. So that will be a way to merge them. Also, I want to get here the employee ID rather than its full name. So to do that, I'm going to do a merge function. But before I do that, I wanted to remind you of the difference between the merge column function, which applies to merging columns, and the append function, which append rows. So append rows, you have two identical columns and you will add rows after the one existing, while in the merge column you're adding another column, not rows. A great example is merging the employee ID number. So I'm going to do it here in the Home ribbon, merge queries here, and I'm going to say I want to merge based on the employee full name here of the payroll table with the employees table, and then in the employees table I cannot choose these columns because They're not in one, they're separate. But I will use the recently added column with the full name. And then we have a match. The join kind is a left outer join, so I'm clicking OK. And now my additional columns are here in the table, and I will only choose what I need, which is the ID number of the employee, and remove the prefix. And that's it. Employee number 5 is Mr. Bob Hugo. Let's check in the Excel file. Yes, Bob Hugo is here. So I've done the merging. I can now remove the month, year, and employee columns, which are no longer required. Before moving on, I'm going to check if the data types of each columns are correct. So team code is good, this is good, the date is fine, and the ID is fine. Okay, let's check the employees' data types. Everything is fine, the location, and the teams. Okay. Before we import, there's one thing I'd like to simplify here. As I explained to you in the original Excel file, I have many rows, each for the types of contributions. For my dashboard and to simplify matters, I decided to group my payroll rows per types of contribution. We don't need the detail of all the contributions to make this dashboard. So I'm going to group to have only the gross wage rows in one row month by month. So I won't have this detail between this contribution, this one, etc. And the same for the contribution employees and company. To do that, I will go to Transform, Group By, and choose the Advanced Group By. The first part is to set the dimension fields of my group by. So I'm going to keep my team code. I'm not going to keep the transaction name. I'm skipping this. I'm going to keep the contribution type. I'm going to keep the date and the ID of the employee. The second part of group by is the fact fields. So I will keep the gross wage. So this is the sum of the gross or employee contributions, and the company contributions, which is the sum of company contributions. So okay. And now I have a much reduced table, which will save me some time and lighten my data model, because I do not need more. And finally, there is one table which I forgot, and this is one of the most important table. This is the date table. I will explain to you in a few seconds why. So here it is. I've used a function, and you can find many tutorials on the web on how to do a date table in Power Query. So now I can close my Power Query editor and go to Power BI. There are a lot of possible other transformations that you would need to do in some cases with your exports. Like if you have 12 monthly documents, you can use the append rows function to have a global table. You could use the transpose or unpivot functions if you need to restructure your data. Sometimes payroll journals have complex structures where you will have the employee name in columns rather than in rows. Other sources of data that you could use are payroll software. You could connect with them using a connector API from Power query. You could do an SQL query or Azure database query. You could use CSV and text files import as well. So obviously all of these actions we just saw in Power Query could be done using Excel with formulas or manually. But what's interesting in the process I showed you is that you only need to configure it once and for all, and then you will save a lot of time every month. At this point, we have structured our data tables. Now let's move on to Power BI for the modeling part. Note that you can copy and paste the M code from your Excel file to Power Query in Power BI. This is a simple copy and paste operation. Therefore, you can work either in Power BI or in Excel to do your transformations with Power Query. So let's talk about modeling. In our case, we have 5 tables that are shown here. The payroll table is our fact table. I will place it at the center. And then all 4 other columns are the dimension tables. Power BI automatically sets relationships between these tables, but they're not always true. As this is the case here, it's not the right relationship because the ID of the location is not column ID of employees. So the location ID has to be matched with the location ID column here. And in this model, we will only use one-to-many relationships, which are the best. The date table is matched here, and the Teams code is already okay. So now we have our data model. It's a very simple star scheme model with one-to-many relationships. I won't elaborate more, but keep in mind that data modeling is crucial and you need to master it to have efficient reports. Also, I can't emphasize enough that without a date table, the time intelligence functions of DAX will not work correctly. Now that our model is operational, we can start with the data visualizations. Before creating a visual, I'm going to create 7 measures. For that, I like to have a folder measure. To do it, I will click here on Enter Data, and I will create a blank table called a measure. Now, in this table, I will create the measures. The first one is the gross wage, and it is equal to a calculate function, which will be the sum of the payroll gross wage column but I have to filter it out. I have to say I only want the contribution type equal to gross wage. Otherwise, I will get unwanted data. And then I'm formatting. I'm formatting the M code. So read these formulas that way. What do I want to calculate? I want to calculate the sum of my gross wage where the contribution type is equal to gross wage. And we will do the same for the company contributions. So, new measure. But in this instance, I will not sum the gross wage column, but the company contributions one, and say I want to filter by contribution. Another measure I want is the average wage in this company. So new measure again, average wage, calculate, and once again I will, instead of using the sum function, I will use the average function on the gross wage and say that I only want to do it for the contribution type equal to gross wage. And that's it. Now I will create 3 additional measures for the top wage, the median wage, and the max wage. So okay, I've created the additional measures using min, max, and median functions of Power BI DAX. So now we're going to start doing a few visuals. The first one is the line chart with the evolution over time of the wages. So very simple. What are we going to show? Well, the values of the gross wage and the dates in the axis. And we're going to remove the quarter and day grouping and then filter down using this icon here to have all the months of the period. That's it. So this is our first visual. Then we're going to do a bar chart with a comparison between gross wage and company contribution. So this will be that one, for instance. We're going to show the gross wage and company contributions. And as well use the date. And once again I have to drill down to show all the months. Okay, I just realized that in the company contributions I forgot an S, so it should work better that way, hopefully. And that's it. This is one. And then we're going to show, because I created lowest, top, median, and average wage, we're going to show them in another visual, perhaps another bar chart, this one. And then the gross, lowest, median, and top wage. And this time we'll not be using the date axis, but rather a team axis to showcase the difference per teams. So that way. Okay, so now we can see for each team what is the top wage, the average wage, median wage, and the lowest wage. I will change the visual here and use a stacked column chart because it makes more sense to show the comparison between the gross wage and company contributions. Okay. Now what's interesting in Power BI is to make some filters by teams, for instance, or by date. So I'm going to create a slicer. So a slicer here by teams. That way I can automatically filter all the visuals of the page when clicking on this slicer. So, okay. And now if I click on marketing, automatically the data will be adjusted to the marketing team. Also, I want to have a KPI of the amount of the gross wage. I'm going to use the card visual, choose gross wage. And I can also do one with the average wage. Okay, so that was the first page of my dashboard. Now, I talked earlier in the goals of doing a computation of the top 5 wages. You could do a DAX function with rank X function, but I have a solution that is much more easier and effective. This is a function that is very well known, but really underused. It's the filter panel here. And we're going to use the top N function of the filter panel. So let's begin by creating a matrix with the wage per employees. So I'm showing the full name employee and their gross wage. All right, now I'm going to duplicate this. And in this case, I will filter the employees here using the filter type top N, showing the 5 top, and I will have to give Power BI the element to rank the top 5. And in this case, it's the gross wage. Apply filter. And now I have the 5 top paid employees, and we can check right here, and the results are okay. So very effective and very simple to do. It only took a few clicks to do it. Another thing I wanted to show you is the custom visuals. To get custom visuals, click on here, the 3 dots, get more visuals. Then it will open the Microsoft App Source and you can select visuals. You only need a free Microsoft account to do that. So I want to show you the tornado chart here. I will click on Add. And now it says OK. Now I have a new icon here where I can create this visual. And I'm going to give you a small example of demographic data, which is very interesting. So in values, again, the gross wage. In legend, I'm going to show the sex. And in group, I'm going to show the team code. And now I'm getting the I can see very visually the amount of wage per team and the difference between men and women. So here it's the sum of wages, but I could very well put in the average wage, which could give you demographic statistics. So here I can see that women have a lower wage than men in the sales division, while in finance women have a higher pay. Finally, if you want to improve the presentation of your report, here is a useful tip. You can use PowerPoint to create your background very easily and save them into a PNG file. So I'm going to show you what I prepared. So here in PowerPoint I created a header and a few rectangles. I saved this as a PNG file, and now I can go back to Power BI, position myself outside of a visual, go to canvas background and choose an image here. And then I'm going to choose my PNG file. I'm choosing 0% transparency and fitting my file. And then all I have to do is readjust my visuals to match the structure. I'm going to remove the white background on each visual, which is not very effective. So off. And then I'm going to change the size of this card to fill into the box. So 18 would be better, and once again 18. Okay, so I did it very fast, but it's to give you an example, and the end result is pretty good. I mean, we did it, all of this in less than an hour, including the Power Query time. So if we had more time, we could do something more elaborate, of course, and create more advanced measures. And finally, you can share your report on the Power BI service. If you are interested in customizing the report depending on the user to attribute different rights on which data can be read by the user, look up RLS on the web and you will find some guideline. I'm going to show you the end result on the Power BI service. So I'm clicking on Publish, My Workspace, and now it's getting uploaded to the web. And now it says Success, and I'm going to show you how it appears. So I'm loading the document on my Chrome browser, and here it is. So we have the main page that we saw before, and we can still filter by team code. It does work on the web. We have the same functions. I can very well focus on one visual. I can export data in an Excel or CSV file. And naturally, I can go to the two other pages we created, the top 5 employees gross wage and the tornado charts here. So pretty great, and you can share this report to anyone. You can watch it on your phone, on your iPad or else. Also, in this simplified example, we could have used more productive ways to create the measures using tabular editor or calculations group. But once again, it would have required another hour to show you all of these. To conclude this chapter, you need to remember that a successful report is one that has a point. You want to demonstrate something using your visuals. Let's say you want to show that your company is young and has faithful employees. There is no need to have hundreds of visuals. 4 or 5 will be largely efficient to highlight your findings. You must tell a structured story and give away meaningful information. Also, you must adopt a common visual identity for your report and think in terms of user experience. The user needs to start from the first page and finish on the last one and understand the storytelling smoothly. So the point of this use case was to show you that you can accomplish very effective HR dashboards with Power Query and Power BI. One question I often hear is, what software do I need? As you can guess, the answer is, it depends. I believe that Power Query is a fine tool to handle transformations of your data. You might also use VBA, which will answer many of your needs. In both cases, you will save a lot of precious time on manual actions on your reporting processes. If you'd like to get further tips on Power Query, make sure you watch my session from last year's Excel Virtually Global conference about Power Query for financial reporting. It is available free on my YouTube channel, where you can also find other videos. In some instances, you won't need something as sophisticated as Power BI. Excel paired with Power Query can be a sufficient tool for simple reporting, especially if you use Power Pivots. For more advanced reportings, Power BI brings another dimension in handling the data and the data viz capability, as well as the possibility to share it with other users. Data-driven HR reporting is fundamental to manage a company. It doesn't have to be complex. In smaller companies, a single page with 4 or 5 visuals will be largely enough. Whether you are a CEO, a CFO, an accountant, an auditor, or an HR head, Power BI is a very powerful tool for you to harness data, no pun intended. Thank you for listening up to now. I hope you liked this recipe for an efficient dashboard and will be glad to answer your questions. Let's connect on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'd like to thank Liam and the Sun Product team for allowing me to host this session from France. This is Vincent Lacomme speaking. See you soon. Good afternoon, Talia.
Good afternoon, Vincent.
How are you?
Today?
Great, thank you. And you?
Yeah, I'm good. Um, uh, I will ask the audience to give us some feedback first, and then I will come to the Q&A. Yeah.
Sure.
Hi everyone. Can you please scan this QR code or access to the bit.ly link on the screen, so that you can give us some feedback for our future events, as well as some feedback for Vincent. It's such an amazing session. Yeah, I learned a lot from it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I
In
hope
the
you enjoy.
Yeah. If you have any question, feel free to leave them in the Q&A box. I personally have some questions for you. So, what are your top 3 tips in using Power BI to creating dashboards or to transforming data?
The first one I think would be to have a common identity in the chart you use. When I started using Power BI, I wasn't very efficient. I tried to use all the visuals, and at the end it didn't have a meaning. So I would say choose very carefully your charts so that it can provide something, so that the person that reads the report is able to get relevant data. I won't say it again as I said it during the session, but having a date table is very important. It's a common mistake, and then you can't use the time intelligence functions. Another important thing is to comment your DAX code when you create measures to be as smooth as possible. And I know that during this Excel Virtually Global Summit, there is a session about DAX. So make sure you watch this other session, learn about DAX, because it's really the most important thing so that your reports are accurate.
Yeah, that's right. I also have background in accounting. Can you share us some of your experience in how do you usually use Excel and Power BI in your daily job?
Most of my daily job is about accounting, tax, and human resources. I use a lot of Power Query because before I was efficient in VBA. I know the next session is about VBA, so I won't say anything discouraging, because I still believe that VBA is really important. But Power Query has been a very easy solution for me to come up with solutions to solve some problems, to import data and create accounting entries. And what I like about Power Query is that everything is tracked and it's solid. While VBA, you need to make sure that you handle the errors. You have to take into account a lot of variables. And Power BI I use for the data viz to show my clients, to give them a more interactive way to talk about financial statements, to talk about reporting dashboards. So I think all of these tools I talked about, whether it's Excel, VBA, Power Query, or Power BI, all are important and all are complementary. I won't discount any of them. I use them for some other functions for my work.
Yeah. Thank you for your advice.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Do you want to talk more about your YouTube channel or your website so that people can connect with you?
Sure. So you can check my YouTube channel. It's still a bit at the beginning because I wish I could do a bit more, but there you can find the last year session I just talked about. And I also produced a video earlier in the year about an example of cash management with Power Query and a bit Power BI. And you can also follow me on LinkedIn, where I write some tips, but they're in French, so you would need to translate them.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today and it's your advice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Talia.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Have a
Liam,
good
and all
day.
the team for organizing the event. And great day, everyone. Enjoy all the remaining sessions. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. See you.
Bye.
Hi everyone. If you haven't filled in the feedback form, please scan the QR code or access to the URL link on the screen to give us some feedback for the next events.